Actually.
Okay, welcome to our speakers and audience. I'm really excited about this session. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 speakers today, and actually Layla Zibar asked to be placed at the end of the session, so this is a little shift, I think, in the sequence. I hope you don't mind that. I think all of you are muted. It's okay. So we will start with our first speaker, Chiara Mazzarella, and she is going to talk about Bijlmermeer, oh my God, and Scampia, the potential of suburbs as centralities in sustainable and circular cities. So the floor is yours, Chiara.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please keep it also to 10 minutes, so we can have time also for a discussion at the end of the session. Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen. Please tell me when I'm finishing my time.
Okay, I will give you a warning.
Thank you. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, I'm very glad to present today in this session with you and have the opportunity to discuss in the end about our research topics. I'm going to present this study of comparison between Bijlmermeer and Scampia, considering what can be the potential of this kind of suburbs as new centralities in sustainable and circular cities. And I developed this part of the study with Professor Hilde Remoy from TU Delft. That is part of my PhD research. Briefly, I will introduce you the theoretical context of the study and the main research question, the methodology adopted, the comparison between the districts and the specific cases, and in the end, some discussion and conclusion. Today, urban regeneration targets can be placed in the broader context of achieving SDGs and transitioning to more sustainable and circular city. What circular city is not completely clear in literature, but we can say that is a place where different actors interact in decision-making processes, public, private, and people, where available resources are managed in a way to more local and looping actions to sharing, adapt, regenerate, and optimize available resources, and where different dimensions of political, environmental, etc. interact. And circular economy, as well as sharing economy and donut economy models, consider waste as a resource. As well as waste resource, also wastelands and wastegapes, so what has been considered wastegapes a long time, can be seen as mines of resources and potential values. So in the context of urban regeneration of suburbs, the question is, what is the potential of the suburbs of 60s in urban transformation? We considered these two different, but also in some way similar neighborhoods that are Bijlmermeer and Scampia in Amsterdam and Naples, by comparing how built environment changed and how public policies and place-based communities played a role in this process over time. These are two European cities, but they are very different, not only because of the city itself, as we can imagine, but also in terms of socioeconomic indicators. While unemployment rate in Amsterdam is quite low in general in the Netherlands, and the population is growing in Amsterdam. Differently in Naples, the unemployment rate is quite higher than the average of Italy, and the population is slightly shrinking over last years. But the two cities are two metropolitan areas that have goals for improving sustainability. But while Amsterdam has a clear goal to get fully circular by 2015, the metropolitan areas of Naples is just oriented toward the sustainability. What do these two neighborhoods have in common, apart being part of the what we call the periphery? Both were planned and founded in the second half of the 60s in response to the housing shortage resulting from the post-war population boom. Both were designed according to Siam's idea of the modern movement of collective living, and they both come from an utopia of shared living in healthy and functioning areas. But unfortunately, in both cases, the story was complex and difficult, and both neighborhoods were not built with all the expected services, and they were very far from the city centers where the urban services were. And also the agricultural landscape into which these high-rise buildings were inserted was radically transformed and with an image that people did not recognize as welcoming. But while in Amsterdam,
Okay, what happened?
Well, she got kicked out.
It seems so.
And other speakers also.
Is it the system kicked them out?
I don't know.
She lost the connection. Okay.
Yes, she's back again. She's coming back again.
Yeah, what should we do? Let me see if we can ask any technical support. Also, Layla is kicked out, I think.
Yes, some all other people are.
Layla, what's going on? We don't hear you, Layla. You are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just. Yeah.
What happened? The system kicked you out, or did you?
No. I turned off my camera for the streaming.
Okay.
Because of the internet connection.
Marijn, I think maybe it's good that we proceed because. Yeah, who's there? Nadia?
I was muted, sorry.
Nadia, I think there is an automatic kicking out, action that Chiara, I think she's kicked out or she lost connection.
No, she's still in, just her camera is off. Chiara, can you maybe type in the chat what is going on? Because she's still in the speakers list, so she should be in.
We still have 2 minutes for her presentation.
Maybe someone else can start the presentation and we go back to Chiara later on.
Maybe,
is that an idea?
I think, yeah, maybe we can give her 2 minutes to give some conclusions. Okay. So let's move to Marijn van de Weijer and Stefano Blezer. And their title is The Urban Living Lab as a motor for revitalizing vulnerable neighborhoods and for involving citizens in circular economy goals. Yeah, so the floor is yours. Marijn and
I'm starting to share my screen.
Yeah, it's good.
If it's okay, you see the presentation full screen now?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, then I start.
Yeah, please.
Okay, good morning. On behalf of my co-authors, we'd like to present to you an analysis of an urban living lab running for 3 consecutive years, 2016 to 2018, in the district of Kerkrade West, here in the south of the Netherlands. So it's one of the cities participating in the Parkstad region, where the conference is at. And the authors of this paper have contributed to this urban living lab, both as teachers, tutors, that's me, and also Nurhan Abujidi, and as student participants. That's co-presenter Stefano Blezer, who actually now also is my colleague at Zuid University of Applied Sciences. And in the context of this conference, we'd like to look at some circular economy concepts and how they landed in this urban living lab. Stefano.
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction. For the audience, I give you a short, brief introduction for the theoretical perspective we took. Then Marijn will also go deeper into how we did this really in practice. And at the end, I will come back to the theory as well. And if you read our title, you see various concepts, and I will introduce them shortly. First, as a starting point, we took vulnerable neighborhoods and its citizens. With this, we mean neighborhoods that have a kind of combination of problems and challenges that weigh on the overall quality of life, meaning the quality of life is below average, you could say. And in these neighborhoods, citizens themselves do not care so much about sustainability or abstract concepts, but rather focus on livability and day-to-day practices. Our goal was to find out how we can revitalize that. And what we mean by this is how we can improve the overall quality of such a neighborhood by focusing and improving public spaces. Therefore, we used the idea or ideology of urban living labs, that we take an urban site as a kind of learning space, and that we do innovation together with the local municipality, with local organizations like the Housing Association, with students of Zuid University of Applied Sciences, but most important also with the citizens themselves. Therein we focused on how to introduce them within circularity or with the circular economy idea, because it is a sustainable and abstract concept. Often these citizens in vulnerable neighborhoods don't care so much about it, so we try to figure out how can we introduce this concept to their daily lives. And we think this is very important not only for revitalizing urban spaces and for introducing this concept to the citizens, but also because of the legislation in the Netherlands that is changing, the so-called Planning and Environment Act of Omgevingswet, that will make these participatory processes more important. So this is actually the positioning of the theory that we used in our project. And Marijn, if you want to tell more about the practice, what we did?
Yeah. So to contextualize a bit, we are set here in the periphery of the Netherlands, in Parkstad in Kerkrade, which is one of the shrinking regions actually of the country. So you see in the dark blue zones that those are the peripheral regions of our country. And Kerkrade is actually hit quite hard by this shrinkage, and especially also the neighborhood where we have been working, Kerkrade West, which is one of the districts, the western district of the city. And you can see that in the urban landscape. To give some examples, you see, for example, in the left upper corner, a park. This is a nice park that was constructed or made on the site where previously had been many social houses that have been taken from the housing stock. But you also see that demolition in the public, in the landscape, the public domain. You see housing being demolished. You see also public institutes like the church. You see in the upper right corner also the churches have been disappearing. Some have been adaptively reused. Schools are closing. So there is a lot going on. And in the meanwhile, also you see a piece of infrastructure in the lower right corner. There is a new ring road in the Parkstad region that is connecting better the entire region, but is also how do I say that, encapsulating Kerkrade West, separating it from its context of the city. So this is to give a bit of the context, and obviously in this area there are limited job opportunities. There is an aging population. There is a lot of poverty and poverty issues. So people are very much concerned about their livelihood, as Stefano has already indicated. So what did we develop? Actually, we did a series of workshops that we did on site on a yearly basis. participating with inhabitants, participating with elderly, with youngsters, with kids, and trying to invent new ways of revitalizing public space. We had a focus on public space. So it was an approach to develop on-site workshops, and we brought in students from several backgrounds and disciplines, working with the community members on sustainability goals to get them, to translate them to their living environment. Some of these projects delved into the concept of circular economy, and students also helped in defining context-specific urban strategies that relate to the circular economy and to the everyday life of local inhabitants. So to give you an illustration of what is delivered, I will present two exemplary projects that have very interesting outlook on circular economy and a very contextualized approach to it. The first project that was developed by a student group is called Vintage Boulevard, which is a project that has acknowledged the tension between underperforming shopping streets in this neighborhood and the emergence of new shopping cultures taking shape in high-end shopping outlets, especially in this region. For example, in Roermond, a city in Limburg, or in Maasmechelen, a city in Belgium, Limburg, just across the border. They have certain, let me say, Disneyfied shopping outlets where high-end shopping can be done. According to these students, Kerkrade should embrace the difference with these outlets and gear its shopping streets, its partly obsoleted shopping street, to the vintage market. So the flea market is explored as a new spatial typology that empathically fits with the lives of local inhabitants and allows rediscovery of low-threshold circular economy principles. So the urban area by these students is reinterpreted to facilitate diverse rhythms of usage throughout the day and the week, and stimulating also shared space as a contribution to the growth principles. More efficient, more shared usage of public space. So you see that here in the projection of flea market principles in public space. Another interesting outlook on the circular economy is the bricks filling for social platform project that was also set in the main shopping street. So there is this economical perspective where that focuses on elderly, youth, and families, and tries to bring in an idea of a platform that is modular, that can be reused, removed, etc. It can be furnished with different elements, that has flexibility, and that allows also for learned adaptation during the stage of use, responding to user feedback. This way, it should be possible to find out what type of elements suit what part of the street best and have a sort of a circular approach to these elements that refurbish the streets. So how did we also learn from this? We did that by interacting constantly with the community, but also by developing focus group evaluations. And these are the following observations that I want to stress. Very importantly is that the student involvement raised citizen participation and local interest, because they were happy of getting the attention of a young group of people with new viewpoints. They helped to raise the understanding among the inhabitants of sustainability concepts, and especially also about circular economy principles. And we learned also that interdisciplinarity is a key in this, and that the role for social work was more desired in combination to the design perspectives that we stressed most focus on. Lastly, very important, the genius loci, the nature of the place, the spirit of the place is a starting point. And we really learned that the revitalizing of social structures and narratives is highly important in this sense. So please, Stefano, if you can conclude.
Yes, for the three theoretical implications, so to say. I will read them out. So first, we think we can lower the threshold of the concept of circularity as a sustainability concept to a more livability concept by introducing it to the daily lives of citizens and actually to their public space that they use on a daily basis. The second outcome is actually that our workshop cycle shows the potentials to revitalize vulnerable neighborhoods by including a social dimension of circularity in these urban interventions, and that we use this genius loci, as Marijn told us, as a starting point for students and their designs to generate a dialogue between citizens for improving their urban and public spaces. And the last one is a bit contradictory to current literature of urban living labs that often states that urban living lab activities remain invisible and seemingly randomly scattered across a city. We show that it can definitely be visible and is not randomly scattered, as you can focus specific on vulnerable neighborhoods to lift them up to a higher overall level quality of life. I think these are the most important points to take away. And if mine goes to the next slide, I want to, on behalf of him, thank you all for the attention. And this publication, actually this abstract was a pre-publication of a book that is coming out later this year. And I think you are all definitely invited to read more about our 3-year project.
Thanks a lot, Marijn and Stefano. Yeah, a bit on time, which is good. Now let's move to our next speaker, Anjo Peeters, the 5th facade revisited towards roof renovation as an off-the-shelf circular or consumer product. Floor is yours. Anjo, are you sharing your, is she on? No.
I think Marijn is like closing his sharing of the video, so I guess that we can share not simultaneously. So.
Okay. But is Anjo online?
I didn't see.
Yes, she is. She is.
Okay, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Please share your screen, Anjo. Yeah. Let's unmute her. Where is turn? You are unmuted. Refresh, please. Are you still with the? Are you still there?
Yes, I think I'm there.
Yes, let's start.
Refreshing kicked me out, so I'm sorry, but
no problem.
You muted and I couldn't unmute myself again.
Yeah,
but thank you. I'm here. Fine. Right. 5th facade revisited. That is a term. Let's move on. Thank you. This is what I want to tell you in these 10 minutes. The introduction, why, preliminary results, and of the initial research, the progress we are making now, and the things we plan. So that is what I'm trying to do. Introduction. This idea is about renovating in components. There's already a lot of things and good things happening in renovating in order to meet the criteria of the CO. I think it's gone now. Is that correct? Right. I don't know what happened, but I'll put it back on. Okay. Right. Where were we? It's mainly complete renovations are done. That is a very good idea, but it's mainly in social housing, and that is 56% of all total houses in Holland or in the Netherlands are privately owned. And these are a big problem. as Mr. Thompson already said in his keynote, that it's a hassle and people don't really like it. So that's what we're addressing here in this research. This is an idea of which components there are. I can tell a lot about it, but I'll just leave it. We're currently working on the roof and the facade components, and I'm doing the roof, so that's the idea. Of course, when you work in components, they all have to fit together, so it's like the sliders, and you can make choices. That's an overall idea, but this research is about the roof and what to do with that, so that's the component we're addressing. We have some premises that is the chances to meet other needs rather than only the criteria for the reduction of CO2 emissions and like biodiversity or natural moments of action that play a significant role, because timing to do something about housing is important. And we're also focusing on business cases. So we need to have a balanced business case, because now we say it is not there. Otherwise, people would be doing a lot more about renovating their home and changing it. That's it. This is one where the fifth facade really comes into play, because when you do something about a roof, it might be even better to do more than only keeping the weather out, and even those other things you can do with the roof are more interesting to owners than this complying with CO2 reduction. So maybe that is just a collateral thing for them, actually, that might make a big change. And what we wanted to do is check what roofs do we actually have in an area, and we chose a sample area. We did it through this map. I don't know if you know it, but it's a map of the Netherlands with all the houses or all the buildings categorized in color by date of erection. And just to show you where it is in Rotterdam, this is the main port of Rotterdam. This is harbor area. It's here up in the north, and it looks like this from the air from Google Maps. And we tried to do reductions, and we did, and we checked what kind of roofs do we actually have. And the main goal was to survey and to check what do we need in order to get real good idea about what kind of roof types we're having. And we did some criteria, we took some characteristics of all of that, basically morphological, but also non-morphological. And we found out what kind of roof types they're in, and they're not that different from one another. So these are the results. Now I want to talk about when you do this survey of the area, you get a lot of numbers, and they're all very interesting, but numbers, well, they're not just numbers, but we wanted to arrange them in a way that we could say more about the subsets and the sets of roofs we're actually having here. And if I go one further, you can see what they mean. So this is the Euler diagram with all the roofs and the flat roofs, the type of sets, the subsets we made. And when we go through that, well, I can talk way longer about it, but if we go through that, we did not only do numerical relevance, but also architectural relevance. And when we put that in, we get a number of reference types, because that is what we're looking for. That's what we aim for, to see if there are certain reference types we can use, we can really analyze in a big way, and check if we can make solutions for roofs there that apply for all those types of buildings throughout the Netherlands. And they look like this, what we have here. It's facades and the roofs, of course. We also aimed at a way to address it, and there's always three things that we can see and that we defined. And that is, we started from the object point of view, that's the technical point of view, but there's also this is one force field, and the other force fields are ownership and environment. And these always play a role in everything. And that's what we wanted to define or get clear. And if you want to have something like a good business case for owners, you have to be spot on, you have to be in the middle, because the owners, they decide this stuff about the environment, literally and in a figurative way, like legislations. And of course, the object, it needs to be able to it needs to be done, or it's possible or impossible. And that is crucial. So you have to be, we named it the zone of relevance, and you have to be in there. And the big question is, of course, how do you get there? One of the things you can use is a Moscow principle, and because these are the questions that go for every force field, and we're trying to circle to the middle and to get a good business case for every reference type. So actually, that was the initial research and results, but there's more to be done. So it's in progress, and what we're doing now is actually working towards pilot project. That's a bit longer away, and we started this year in February with bachelor graduation students, and they're looking at the different reference types in combination with different questions to ask related to the big question we have. And these are just a few examples of that. We also have a graduation studio. These students also are in there, and which has a broader view. And we also work with like Metropole, you just saw with partners, but also with the municipality of Rotterdam as a partner to work towards roofscapes in a bigger scale. And the plans we have are just a validation check on how to work on this, and to see if the data gathering is a good idea. We also try to, we did it by hand now, but maybe it can be done through digital ways, looking for that. And the construction, of course, is a very important aspect, because now if you have a series of one, it just is difficult, and everybody makes his own projects. I'm almost finished. And this is a way to go that, and this is a way to get it all connected. It's just to show, it's not, you cannot read it, it's in Dutch, but it's a way to show that we want all the connections spiraling towards working on a real project to get it as an off-the-shelf product per reference. Thank you. That was all.
Thank you, Anjo. Yeah, that's interesting. I think there are many questions, at least in my head, that we will come back to you. Cecilia, can you introduce our last two speakers, Furlan and later Layla, I should believe. Please. Unmute yourself. Anyways, we don't hear you, so maybe I can do that. Because we don't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So I would like to introduce Furlan Culverts. We are very, very interesting project. So let's move on to the next speaker.
Yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, now the screen sharing has stopped. Nice.
Don't know. Today we had some diverse technical issues since the morning. Yes, we see your screen now.
See my screen? Nice.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So welcome everyone. My name is Furlan Culverts. I'm a teacher and researcher at Zuid University. I'm teaching at the Faculty of Engineering, and those engineering students are also involved in our research. One of the research projects that we have is focused on smart windows. And for that, I would like to present the results today. We focused on the lifetime testing of smart windows. And this lifetime testing we did in two separate ways. We used the laboratories at the Bijlmermeer and Scampia campus. Hogeschool has several laboratories that we can use. And also Bijlmermeer Material Center has its laboratory on the top floor, which we also use for this project. Next to the laboratory test, we also have a living lab location, which is at the Bijlmermeer and Scampia campus in Geleen. And there we have two tiny houses where windows can be installed. And also we have recently installed a solar road, which you can see just behind in this picture. In this presentation, I want to focus on the lifetime testing that we did in the laboratory, which is an accelerated way of testing the lifetime of a project. So the project has been developed by Bijlmermeer Material Center, and it's a thermochromic vanadium dioxide coating. This coating switches depending on temperature to an infrared transparent and infrared blocking state. So at warm days, it can reflect infrared light, and it prevents heating up of the indoor environment of the building. Now, these kind of coatings of vanadium dioxide can be applied to the outside of a window, but of course it can also be applied in the double glazing system where it is exposed to an argon environment. For now, we have focused our lifetime results, lifetime testing, only when the coating is exposed to outdoor conditions, so involving oxygen and humidity in the degradation process. So here you can see on the right, you can see the vanadium dioxide coating, which is applied first to a silica and layer onto a glass substrate. With such kind of samples, we tested the optical properties during its lifetime. So here you can see such a typical graph where the transmission of the coating is plotted on the y-axis versus the wavelength. So you can see that in higher wavelengths, going to the infrared regime, the coating switches to an infrared transparent state to infrared blocking state. And we can get important information from that, such as the solar modulation, which is the switching at 1600 nanometers. Typically, the coating switches at 68 degrees. And also, it's important to look to the visible transmission of the coating, which we call the luminance transmission, where you take into account the sensitivity of the human eye. Now, these kind of measurements we did for two types of coatings. First of all, just a pure vanadium dioxide coating, where here in the table you can see the properties. So we have almost 70% of luminance transmission. And you can see that depending on the temperature, this does not change in luminous transmission. So your eye also does not see the effect of the transition. Now, in order to improve this luminance transmission and make the coating less colorful for your eye, the vanadium dioxide has been mixed with a silica sol. And indeed, we saw that the optical properties can be improved quite a lot. Unfortunately, you do have to, you do lose a bit of the solar transmission ability. So with these kind of coatings, we can get a luminance transmission of 75% minimal. So here you can see such kind of coating. It still looks slightly yellowish, but on the large scale, it's actually really nice to look through. So these coatings have been tested for lifetime purposes. And in order to improve this lifetime, we also applied a silica layer on top, which also serves as an anti-reflection layer. So we can improve the luminance transmission with the application of the silica layer. Also, we saw that the scratch resistivity of the complete layer stack is much more improved. And of course, the improved lifetime that we saw, which I would like to show you next. So these lifetime measurements have been performed with this kind of climate chambers where you can set humidity and temperatures. And we set the temperature program such that the coatings would continuously switch between infrared blocking and infrared transparent state. So here you can see the results of the two. So the vanadium dioxide mixture and the pure vanadium dioxide. And you can see again the transmission spectra after a certain amount of switches. So after 2000 switches, we see that the vanadium silica mixture shows much more resistivity to the outdoor environment compared to the pure vanadium dioxide, both covered with this anti-reflection layer of silica. So from these measurements, we can say that when the coating is exposed to outdoor conditions, it has a lifetime of about 5 years. And of course, in the future, we would like also to focus on the switch fatigue of these samples under an inert environment, because of course we want to have a much longer lifespan of 5 years, as normal building elements would require a lifetime of 20 years. In addition, we also saw that the UV resistance and the air resistance of these coatings is really great. They are resistant to air for almost a year, and also for UV illumination, you don't change their optical properties, which is one of the requirements for getting a project validated according to NEN norm. And further outlooks are to upscale the production procedure, which you can see in these pictures. Here are some colleagues from Brightlands Material Center. And the outlook is to test under inert environment, as I explained to you. So next to these laboratory tests, we also have the lifetime testing in the testing lane that we made at the Brightlands campus. So as you have seen before, we have the solar road where we incorporate silicium panels in the road. And we have also these tiny houses which have recently been placed at the Gemmelot campus. So here you can see the window types that will be installed later. So with that, I would like to thank all my colleagues that have contributed to this work, the colleagues at Brightlands Material Centers and Zuid Hogeschool. And of course, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Furlan, for a very interesting presentation that is helping us to go from a macro scale to the micro scale and then to the, again, a macro scale again. So I would like to give the word to almost Dr. Layla Zibar, with a presentation on the circular reality of a refugee camp, the case of Syrian refugee camps, Iraqi Kurdistan. So, Layla, it's yours.
Thank you. So I'm sharing my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Perfect. So hello and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining me here. So I'll be talking about different story in a different context. So bear with me, it's more of a story than technical facts. So while circularity, as we have been seeing in this conference, has been portrayed in different debates as a correction move to the misuse of natural resources and drastic effects that are feeding the global climate crisis, circularity seems to aim to make amends by looking and acting into the present as a preventive measure to decrease or eliminate the unsustainable practices to go to the future. So far, many presentations from yesterday and today have framed what circularity means as a future-oriented project, how well-being is related not only in managing and saving natural assets, but also putting again energies extracted from different life cycles into new ones, using different factual figures to support their findings and proving how realistic their stories are. So, though my presentation may share the same ambition to think in circular manner, I will tell the story a little bit differently. I will be talking about circularity as a way of living, transmitted generationally as a cultural practice, and how these different circular cultural habits shape communities that cannot afford but to be circular. In 3 stories on 3 urban and societal scales, I will bring to your attention how certain circular practices are acting as life-saving methods in order to respond to emergency, to endure, and to get by. Okay. So all these stories are from our recent times. Not older than a decade, they all have the exact beginning: forced displacement, armed conflict, rupture, and homelessness. Today, hearing the names of these countries, Iraq and Syria, invoke pictures of long-standing crisis, destructions, and populations ruptured from their homes, their lives, to a violent, sudden impact on everyday habitat and its inhabitants. This has been also a dramatic destruction on the physical environments, but also on the way that life used to be. So dropped from natural life cycle, these populations become politically labeled as people of concern, refugees. The camp becomes where ruptures of these wasted lives actually land. Sorry. Supposedly, the camp is temporary waiting room for these populations to go back into living forces somewhere else, to be put back again into a life cycle. Yet statistics highlight that the average time of this temporary waiting in camps, in the global south at least, ranges between 15 to 25 years. So the stories are always about different forms of waiting, but what can circularity do in temporary situations, in spaces doomed for closure? So the stories today about waiting embodied in the floating human vessel, but also in the spatial structures that receives them. The first story starts from here. Though the Syrian conflict started a decade ago and was followed later by the rise and fall of Islamic State of Iraq, the recent displacement wave was recent in 2019 due to the Turkish attacks on the northern Syrian borders. In order to manage the unexpected waves of refugees, 18,000 individuals pouring into the country, a former closed camp was reopened to become again a receiving structure for populations that have no place to go. The international aid flew into the country. National assistance as well is coming to rescue, while different goods and humanitarian packages enter the camp massively. The campsite is recycled, the provisional infrastructure is being rehabilitated, while refugees mine the camp for whatever can be used to set the makeshift structures in order to make life in the camp endurable. As you see in the picture here, the shop was actually installed from patches from formerly used tents to create a small store to sell goods. However, the transit nature of the situation, the uncertainty of the camp's future, and the challenging long-term rehabilitation plans, water provision, regular solid waste, management, dislodging, problematic problems caused by operational and care maintenance, all coupled with restrictions of movement, corona pandemic, the lives of the population in the camp still depend heavily on consistent humanitarian assistance. So the second story is about Bijlmermeer refugee camp. The camp was set in late 2017 as a reception center for refugees waiting to be relocated in other camps. Caravans from another sites were also towed back into the camp to act as an immediate response. With tents coming also from different humanitarian organizations, as you see these different typologies also flowing the camps. Other camps were also now exceeding their full capacities. The decision was that the transit to become permanent. With the protection of the refugee situation, the campsite was facing health and protection issues, with heavy rains flooding into the tents and adding difficulties to that, the inadequate water quality from existing boreholes. Everything now is imported into the camp. And consequently, the messy situation of the campsite went through a part-by-part replanning and reconstruction to reset and improved a new structure. The site was reconceived. The site was reconceived and planned. As a new infrastructure, and the models were also developed, creating a different mode of living. By the end, all the tents were replaced, and the improved shelter was set into place, and now the camp is going through different situation. With the problem also, again, with the corona, the restriction of movement, and also the isolation of the location of the camp, the situation became more and more dire, a lot of people waiting to be relocated in the camp. So my third story comes from the first refugee camp set in place in 2012. I'm sorry. With the situation becoming more and more dire, 80,000 individuals were actually living in this camp in 2012. Though the first story with the camps is almost the same, however, the situation is becoming more difficult. It was more of a self-assembled. The situation of the camp was also circulated by different IDP and refugee camps, and the aid was flowing into the country in an unprecedented manner. However, the situation was very difficult in the beginning, so all the refugees had to do the self-built models. The tents and the situation went through different types of materials being provided by different assistants. Also, the close-by sitting offered different material stock that the refugees started to upload and modify their models. So in the camp, you can buy and you can use anything that is existed. Everything was reassembled, deassembled, and also mined from the camp, within and outside of the camp boundaries, to come again and fall into a life cycle. Everything has to be to also provide a new familiar. The refugees were staying longer and longer times, and the situation was becoming different. However, we really need to think also how life also emerged within the camp. The existence of a close-by city also provided different work positions. Coupled with the assistance, many of refugees also activated their entrepreneurs skillship, and they also set their own shops to also provide within the camp what is needed and what is not provided by different NGOs. Many refugees were trained. Those who were also skilled before, they tried to also rebuild within the camp. Many of them work within and outside of the camp due to different situations. Everything is put to use. Even the human life was put again to a life cycle. But however, the situation is still conflicted, though the different recycling modes, different refurbishing, mining around still happen. However, the exhausted infrastructure of the country in different chronic conflict modes also doesn't have the infrastructure to treat, also to deal with the natural problematic things that also happen in a life situation. So to think again and highlight again, though that these stories have been illustrating different brighter side of a very dark story of a refugeehood. However, darkness cannot be dismissed. Dependency, funding gaps, cascades of crises in form of conflict, instability, economic problems, and corona now had made the situation more dire, closed the camps. The flows are also now being cut off. The sustainment of the camp that relied on the existing local assets, regional and territorial, also becoming more problematic. So as humanitarian camps represent micro worlds, they also represent being places where refugees live, consume, and also dispose. We have to think even that they are long-term or short-term spans. We have to think about livelihood opportunities. We think about infrastructures that are still always falling in terms of operation. So my last conclusion point will be what circularity can do. It can develop models and redesign schemes that are spatially circular. We are standing from zero scratch here, and it's an opportunity to actually design circularly. We can incorporate energy, invest in the camp as a spatial structure, fit the prolonged chronic needs, and also decrease dependence and pressures on the host. We cannot eliminate dependency, but however, we can decrease as much as possible. It is very important also to take into consideration that these funding curves and fluctuations actually affect how people live, and then how the people will sustain after these funding gaps are over. So thank you. This is a different story, so I hope that was different.
Provocative a bit. Chiara, I think we need really to have some time for a discussion. So if you just conclude some of the results that you reached in your research. We appreciate that.
I have been talking alone for a while, so I don't know how much you could follow on my presentation. I'm very sorry for that, but it has been really interesting to hear others' presentation after mine. I found very many points of interest. Like Marijn first talked about the Genius Loci as a starting point in vulnerable neighborhood. That is also something I found in the cases of Bijlmermeer and Scampia. I don't know if you had something about the comparison over time, but I was interested in the contested image and the role of this iconic architecture, where place-based communities had a very strong role in the conservation, in the demolition, in the self-organization, and they also implemented forms of sharing economy spontaneously without knowing a definition of circularity or everything. And today, the role of these communities in these neighborhoods is interesting because they are part of the potential, but also is a challenge to manage the collaboration with the public policies and with stakeholders that want to invest in circular transformations in this area, because residents of that neighborhoods developed a strong emotional bond with the place. So sometimes that is a potential to get involved in the co-management, in the co-governance of the future of the area, but to also overcome some ideas they have to agree each other is something difficult that we need to improve. Well, I was really out of the presentation, but the role of place-based communities was what I mostly am interested in this kind of areas, and so also how Living Lab can be carried out.
Thank you, Chiara. I think it's very interesting. It connects also with what Marijn and Stefano presented. Okay, so the tool of a Living Lab and how you can also connect with the relevant stakeholders, especially the users or the local community. Now, looking at the questions, Furlan, I think though it looks like we are going between the technical and non-technical, it's very interesting the diversity of topics we have today, not only scales but also the approaches to circularity, with an extreme example from Layla. But Furlan, like Philippe, he was asking, did you also look at the reflective absorption properties of your coating and the resulting variation of the solar heat? Again, coefficient?
I didn't fully understand the question. I will look it up in the chat.
Yeah.
We didn't look into the reflection properties actually. I don't know. Yeah, depending on temperature, we did reflection measurements, but I didn't show them over here because we are mostly interested in the transmission of the coating. The rest question.
I think Mika is asking, and this was also one of my questions, what will be the coating, what will it mean for the ability to reuse the window in the future?
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's we didn't look into the circularity of the product itself, so if you can reuse it. I think, the coating degrades in time and loses its crystallinity and goes to from VO2, it can go to a V2.5 state where it doesn't have the thermochromic properties anymore. But maybe there are some possibilities that you anneal the window again and that you have again the thermochromic product back. But we didn't do any research into this yet.
Because I think this is the principles that we are designing also, or designing a new product or developing a new product that gives you this energy efficiency, but we need also to make sure it doesn't become a waste itself in the future. It can also be reused or recycled, you know, or reoriented somehow. So this is, I think, the message that you receive from this question. I look at Anjo. I think that the way you really mapped the whole city and you sampled all you know, the typologies of roofs, and also looking at how you can use them. It was really interesting. We had a small project in here, also roofscape. And I am a little bit curious, okay, what is the role of the municipality? Are they really actively looking at the proposals of your students? What is the perspective? Are they going also to do sort of like a small intervention, or like, you know, a pilot in the city? Or what is the plan now?
Well, the municipality is linked because they also have a plan, but it's mainly for the center of Rotterdam. They have a roofscape idea, and they have the idea that you should use more roof space because ground space is scarce, and it's a potential we're not using effectively, and they have the problem that they own some buildings, of course, but they do not own the houses, or not even the social housing. So they are trying to nudge and finding their way in how to facilitate. In Rotterdam, they have subsidies for green roofs for a long time and work quite well. So they're linked now to our studio to exchange knowledge and to also use the network of them to get flowing, to get more flow in it. So.
But because for me, like, what is the question you are dealing with? Is it you are sort of the green roofs are used like from energy, like from CO2 production perspective, like you want to minimize that, giving a good aesthetics, or are you going also to look at it from socio-economic perspective? I remember a project in Barcelona, and it is also like you know, urban gardening, but also invading the whole city, like the roofs, but also balconies, where the Ministry of Agriculture was also providing all the, like the main, you know, small, like the plants, to start this movement towards, you know, greening the city, but at the same time using it as a way of economic or, you know, economy generation for the local community. How do you see this?
Well, I think that is one of the goals of the municipality, but for this research, the goal is to get a better, to get kind of a shop idea for private owners to get a new roof or something done with their roof in order to to enhance their home of their living or whatever they want, and that is that fits in the bigger goal of the municipality of Rotterdam to get to use the roof spaces as a fifth facade, actually. So that helps each other.
Cecilia, do you have also questions? And maybe now we can go to Layla. I think you also received some quite interesting questions.
Yeah, I guess that we can go both to Marijn, Stefano, and Layla. I mean, I guess there is a question that can be interesting for the three of you, and maybe also for Chiara, that is about the storytelling. So how you integrate this kind of component, because you're also working with this kind of human component in the built environment. And then I will sum up all the questions so you can afterwards talk, all of you. So especially for Marijn and Stefano, there are two questions about how do you integrate the work with the citizen and the work with the students, because they are working in a situated learning environment. And then I would add to this, what are the benefit and the limitation of working in a living lab approach? And that could be also a question for Chiara. So what did you learn, and what we can learn from your experience, and why circularity should be addressed throughout the living lab approach? And then there are many questions for Layla, or maybe much more than question, comments.
But let's first listen to the feedback from Chiara, Stefano, and Marijn, please. Yeah. They don't want to.
Marijn, maybe you can start and then.
Can't you unmute yourself?
Let's go with Chiara, that she was speaking before, and maybe.
Yes, okay. I thought that the question was first to Marijn. That's why I was not speaking. Yeah, the role of living lab is particularly difficult in this kind of neighborhood I have been studying, because there are strong communities of residents really involved in the transformation of the area, in sharing and self-organization, but they also have very strong ideas of what they would like to have, and that is difficult to open minds and let people collaborate really, creating networks and overcoming the divergences that, of course, are the most difficult part. At this moment in Naples, the sales committee, the committee of residents of the buildings, they asked for years for the demolitions of all the buildings because they have a negative image for the city. And they obtained that just one of the buildings will be reused. So they are part of the new master plan, but there is another big part of the inhabitants, of the residents of Scampia, that are they disagree with the decision, and they are not part of the decision-making process with the municipality. So it will be interesting to try to involve more people in the process and not just the groups that are more strongly involved.
Yeah. If I can add to that, it sounds very recognizable. Since we were working in a situation where there was also some difficulty in the communication and in the viewpoints between citizens and the municipality, up to a point that the relations had gone, yeah, you can say sour between citizens and administration. There was also a lot of political hassle between parties, etc. But it turned out that bringing a group of students in as a very almost neutral, innocent party with new ideas was very helpful in bringing back balance, as they almost naively entered discussion with citizens. And that really helped, because we noticed, and that also we found it out in focus groups afterwards, that this helped. These slower discussions helped in getting across ideas about circularity, about sustainability, to the people that they were first very negative about. So that was one idea. And also what helped is that we worked on site, almost low tech. You saw some drawings, and we did Photoshop, and we did sketches, and we did models. And I think that also helped because what we notice also sometimes when students don't interact with people, when they remain in their studio, they start to design very idealistic and intrusive things, and then the people get scared. But because they had to interact with people and go to their daily environment and their daily speech, they could level the discussion. So that was interesting.
Maybe to add shortly, I think the interlink between citizens and students also helps. No, I will explain that. All right. Like Marijn told us, the Genius Loci, as a starting point for student designs, generated this dialogue between what should we do in the neighborhood. And in the end, I think this is exactly or especially beneficial for the end result, so to say, because you got a design that is much more aligned with local feelings of sense of belonging, the ownership of the neighborhood, and local identities and historical structures, for example. So you make designs that maybe land better in the neighborhoods. And one of the struggles, I think, and maybe that's also personal because I was involved in the first year, and seen from the urban living lab perspective, is expectation management, because urban living labs focus on learning, but up front you don't know what you will learn. So often it's a lot of friction, but this will help for the end result, but it's hard to keep motivation, etc. So this is one of the
Stefano, a very important point. I think in all the living labs that we are working in now, at least in Limburg, we have 5 or 6 living labs. I think this management of expectation is very important. And this is, I think, yeah, sometimes the limitations that we see or the challenges when you work with the local community, because now they are also expressing their frustration with the, you know, the other stakeholders like municipalities, and they also like try to achieve or to put all their you know, ambitions on the table in this type of exercise, which is not actually the purpose of it is to implement all the ambitions. It is actually to create a dialogue, which brings me to Layla. I think, Layla, we had a discussion. Yeah, your PhD is not about circularity, so just to start with that. Your PhD about like refugee camps and the concept of homeness and homing and all the, you know, this the other types of concepts. So the discussion that we started with, like, okay, where are the parallels? Because I feel there are so many parallels. The first one, in other contexts, you see like there is sort of a structure, a system where the local community can be engaged in this dialogue, and this is what we have in the other cases. While in your case, the local community, the refugees are left alone with all this bombardment with aid, international aid, without looking really at them as human beings who have also ambitions and also desires to achieve even in this temporary settlement. This is one. The second one, it provoked me because now it is a message that we also had from yesterday's session. Yeah, go to basics. You don't have to reinvent everything. Technology is not the solution. No technology, you know, or it is sometimes the answer. And this is also an invitation for other types of settlements or other projects. And this is, I think, a learning lesson for me that yes, if we, within our knowledge development and methods and techniques and tools development, can empower and not give, because we are also in this like power relationship again. No, it's not a power relationship. Our work as researchers is also to empower the local community with these tactics that they can adapt to their own use. And then you start all this movement on the ground with the local community that it is becoming more self-sustained, not dependent on subsidies or all the, you know, upper systems. How do you see that? So I want to conclude with this perspective, Layla.
Well, first, yes, circularity is definitely not something I explored until recently. I had to apply to this when I wanted to apply actually to this conference. So basically, what I found out through different readings, and maybe this is just like brushing, but it's always about the well-being. It's the end, you know, the end is well-being, but whose well-being? And it's about thinking of what we're doing in different situations. And in refugee situation, the thinking is very short spanned. Though that it's a reoccurrence of the same phenomena, you feel every time in a refugee situation, you're reinventing the wheel, you know? You're just using a grid, distributing things, caring for people who needs care. But we forget the most essential part of refugeehood, is that the refugee is a powerful agent who took a decision to leave and who took a decision to seek a possibility somewhere else. This is a very important factor in every refugee situation. However, the way we care and you know, it's like how you care for your child. But the problem with the refugee, he's not a child. He's like the care and the operational way of care, the upkeeping, it's like a machine. And the camps acts like, you know, a life-saving machine just to breathe. And then the question of circularity becomes, Of course, they have to be circular because they cannot cover. The needs are addressed in the camps are the basic needs. So you feed, to shelter, to have a roof. But the expansion of these needs, the long time waiting in this room, the opportunities that actually rely, some people don't want to go to a third country, sometimes are waiting to go back. Sometimes people develop relations within the camp, within the host communities. So the problematic thing is in the refugee situation is the prolonging and also the perception of temporary as the occupational group. But we forget that what we do on nature, on land, on material is indispensable. So the interaction between circularity, between material, but also the human body as also a form of a vessel that the circular flows goes in and comes out, developed and changed, is very important to take into consideration. And maybe just to respond slowly to some questions, first and most important thing is about the camp is designed. So circularity is actually having the chance to design circular from scratch is the camp. You're just putting something new. So how can we actually design circular? This is a very big question that you can ask in a camp where you cannot ask in a city. And yes, narratives do help, Stefano. I think telling the story brings the story to reality. You can communicate a story to anybody, to a policymaker, but also to a child. You can, the story itself tells different dimensions. And every time we grow older, you know, we revisit our childhood stories and we think about the values they produced. So I would say if I can write a book about circularity for little children in different ways of you know, not to waste or how the value of not to waste is actually goes to the future, it's very important. But we need to think from today, from what the present, living the present as a temporal way is different in a refugee situation. And we can learn a lot of how to embrace the present, not only think in the future. Future is coming, but living the present is also important. And we need to think of how daily circularity could occur. This is what I would say. I'm not sure if I responded to every question.
Yeah, I think it's it is a very big topic to cover in
it's
2
very
minutes.
Big one, yes. And it's very politically interacted.
So I'm not sure if they will kick us out now. The session is finishing. So I am really grateful for so many points and issues that I learned myself from your presentations. I think from the chemical reactions of Furlan to you know, public spaces, of course, is my topic, but with Layla also is inspiring. Anjo, I think also looking at the built environment from a total different scale and perspective. Thank you all for your contribution. I really think that this type of collaboration and exchanging ideas that will bring us, I think, forward. So enjoy your lunch and I hope I see you in the afternoon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, chairs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for the very interesting discussion. You are highlighting the importance of space throughout different scales, from object to, but really the importance, I guess that this was what emerged. So the complexity of the built environment and the importance of thinking in different scales. And when we are designing circularity. So, and that is the difference that many engineers or industrial ecologists, the people that are generally on top of the circularity, they don't understand. And then we should like create a dialogue with them.
That's also a good idea, yes. Yes.
And also different dimensions.
Yeah.
Good.
Nice.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.